Welcome back from the break. Today we're in conversation with Mosaic, and they'll be giving us tips on how to spot abuse and abusers before the cycle begins. So we are in a heartfelt conversation with representatives from Mosaic, and welcome back to the show, guys. Karen, Mosaic offers a unique form of support to women and girls, and this is directly in courts. How does that work?
So a woman, when she comes to court, is very disorientated. She's been exposed to violence. She doesn't know who to talk to. So when she comes to court, a Mosaic counselor willingly walks that journey with her in understanding court processes, in understanding the forms. Sometimes it may not be in language of choice, and in understanding where to go, what to do, and how to obtain a protection order. That is very important for a woman, in empowering her through that process. And once she gets the protection order, the woman herself, and I think your leasework can attest to that, feels very empowered, because now she's got something that protects her. And I think the reason a woman seeks the services is because they want they want safety. So their safety is important, because they can then protect their children. I mean, you see in an aeroplane, what do they ask us to do? Put your safety mask on first.
Absolutely.
So a woman has to do that. She has to be able to attain her safety first before she can protect her children.
Thank you for that, Karen. Now, the offering self-empowerment skills to women and girls through other development is key. Is that right?
Absolutely. Because remember, in some circumstances, the woman is in a relationship that is dependent on the male. As the provider, she may not be working, she may not have any skills. So empowering her not only on how court processes work, in counseling and all of that, but empowering her to go out, whether it's in speaking skills, whether it's motivation, to go out and ensure that she can become self-sustainable. I think that's critical, because once a person becomes self-sustainable, they find that level of security and confidence within themselves to make changes in their life. It may not be drastic. It may be simple changes that will ensure that they survive the situation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, Karen. Mufuro, this question is to you. And with so much to offer women and girls who suffer from the hands of abusive men, what is on offer to help them recognize abusers and stop the cycle of abuse altogether?
Yeah. So I think because there is no definite formula of identifying an abuser, it's very difficult to spot one in the street. What we do with our services, we also do community education workshops where we basically look at the different forms of abuse, because that's more easier to identify in your partner rather than to say someone is abusive. So we look at educating community members on all the different forms of abuse, and you'd find that in many communities, if someone doesn't have a scar to prove that they've been beaten up, then they do not consider it as abuse per se. So we look at all those different forms, like economic abuse, emotional abuse, the psychosocial abuses. So we train community members, we educate them on spotting these different forms of abuse. And also we look at how abuse actually builds up to the traumatic abuse, such as your physical and sexual abuse. Because you'd find also in many cases that it never just starts as physical abuse. Sometimes it just starts with name calling, with harassing someone or shouting or yelling at someone. So we also then, in engaging with community members, encourage that they do not build up or this or justify it or just take it lightly that someone is calling you names. And you'd find in many cases that the survivors actually take on the blame, or they shift the blame to say, he called me a name because I had insulted him, or I had said something, or I had done something wrong. So that's what we take the form of, rather educating community members in identifying these forms of abuse as they build up, rather than to wait for it to now become a physical or sexual matter. So our education basically is centered and tailored towards that.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. Thank you for that. Yolisa, this is to you. What skills do you have now after your ordeal? What skills do you have now which make you feel confident that you won't fall into another relationship similar to the one you were in before?
Thank you, Mongezi, for that question. I've had a lot of skills now through Mosaic. I attended workshops with them where I learned about how to be assertive. I know now how to handle my partner. And also, they do have support groups where we have to attend it once a month. And there are a lot of skills that I've learned at Mosaic. It's AA abuse. I know all the types of abuse now. I didn't know that if maybe somebody is damaging your property, it's not an abuse, like criticizing you, putting you down, telling you that you are ugly, you are nothing. It's also abuse. And sometimes we women, we allow them to call us those names, and we always feel small, we don't do anything about that. It's whereby we have to have that self-esteem, and you know that, now we are not going to allow anyone to drag you down.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Now we've seen recently how wide this whole gender-based violence. I mean, we've seen young women being killed, and what can be done to stop this, completely eradicate it, so that no longer do we live in a community where women are targets of violence? What more can we do?
I think we have to look at it from multiple levels. It can't just be, well, civil society is working towards it, and there's many civil society organizations working in the sector. It's a systemic and structural issues. We need to look at how the systems around it, what are the, if you look at across the board, whether it's government departments, other stakeholders, what roles do they play, and how can they collaborate on a wider, broader level, that it's just not only on a community level, but looking at the structural issues that act as barriers to women seeking services, women that have been exposed to violence and seek services. You also need to look at what are the enablers, what are the triggers and enablers in the communities that allow abuse to to flourish.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're seeing. I mean, if you look at Karabo Mokoena, if you look at Senekolo, those cases, somebody heard something around them. And you look at, it's pointless they come out after that and say, oh yes, she did tell me something, or I heard this, and you kept quiet. For me, you are complicit in it. You have to speak out, even if you don't want to breach the confidentiality of it. But speak out.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, silence is definitely an enabler.
Well, thank you for that, Karen. Well, after the break, we will be sharing 5 tips on how to keep women and girls safe. Stay with us.